talked about object repeat to create like essentially what looks a lot like a pattern. It's different fundamentally. We'll compare it a little bit to pattern and talk about some pros and cons. What I'm going to do here is just delete this, take our little liquid bridge shape that we made. I'll duplicate it. I'm going to rotate so I have a couple copies of this and they're positioned sort of close together. And then from there, just select them. I'm going to object down to repeat, and then you don't have a ton of options here, but there's radial and grid and so on. I'll just do grid, and then from there you get this very visual, determine how big you want the container to be essentially, and then these sliders are all you really need to use to move those repetitions, closer to one another or further apart, and very dynamic, very intuitive way to essentially make what looks a lot like a pattern. Now, if you look at this in outline view, you are going to see the pattern, is much more efficient in terms of not having actual duplicate objects all over the place like repeat grid does. But repeat can be useful for, just kind of experimentation and I don't know, doing something and then expanding the appearance of it or whatever. Something you don't want to reuse like a pattern can be really nice. The other thing that's nice about object repeat too is you can still get into the object itself, like the original one. And here, if I decide I want to click on, this part of the compound path here, and then as we said before, it's got this liquid bridge between it, I can move it around and it's going to update those other instances. I could make another, just, fundamentally change the way that the shape looks. And, I'll just make another third one here and we'll click on it and move it around. And then we've got, something that's different from what we started with, right? And so that can be interesting to play with. Now, like I said, this does have literally repeated object after object after object, so it's intensive on the hard drive, for example, and file size can get big pretty quickly. Whereas with pattern, you don't have that problem. It's reusable. You can go into the swatch, you can change the swatch, you can do all kinds of things to it, but you do have a bit of a limitation. Notice that if you go into the swatch and you want to, do that same type of editing where you, dynamically move that compound path around, the liquid bridge is sort of firmed up inside of the pattern. So if you look in your layers, you just have a path there and you can't really do those manipulations. So you do have to start off with your base shape sort of already being the way that you want them to look, and then from there make your pattern. But yeah, object repeat, great for experimental and quick and easy sort of essentially pattern making.